This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Fred again, and today I have a colleague, a friend who I've already done a podcast with in the other direction. Dr. Jeffrey Gladden is with us today, and Dr. Gladden is someone who has really found a way in the world of longevity medicine via being an interventional cardiologist. And so this is something that is near and dear to my heart, and that's a pun, a choice of words there that I really want to say, but I'm not sure if Dr. Gladden remembers or if all of you know that I had a cardiological event earlier this year in which I had a dissecting aortic aneurysm and needed emergency open heart surgery. Dr. Gladden is certainly aware of that condition and I'm sure has seen and touched a number of people who have experienced that, some of which didn't make it through. And here I am with the terrific opportunity to interview Dr. Gladden and to share his thoughts and ideas about modern medicine and ways that we can create a life for ourselves that's valuable, maybe even past 120 years old. Now, Dr. Gladden, welcome to The Healthy Healer. It's great to have you here. Welcome, and really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Oh, my pleasure, Fred. Good to see you again.
Yep, good to see you. So for the purpose of just getting started, Dr. Gladden, I'd like to ask my guests a simple question, a 9-letter grammatically correct question that carries a lot of weight. And that question is, Jeffrey Gladden, who are you?
Oh, okay. This is interesting. This is almost back to a Buddhist question now, right? So,
well, I suppose so. It's just a simple question, actually.
Yeah. There's many layers to this. It depends on which avenue you want to go down. But I think from the standpoint of the audience, who am I? Who I am in this particular context is a physician that basically watched my parents, grandparents, and sister go down the aging process and be taken by it, and who's had his own health challenges, not a dissecting aortic aneurysm, but my own health challenges about 15 years ago, which we can go into. But in that context, I realized that the interventional cardiology that I was practicing and the medicine that I'd been trained in wasn't adequate to deal with the issues that I had. And so I basically went down a different pathway to solve my own problems through functional medicine, integrative medicine, et cetera. And that led me to a place where I started to ask a different set of questions. And one thing that I am is probably a philosopher. Another one is really a very spiritually oriented individual. Another is a physician. Another is an entrepreneur. So I'm many things as I stand here today. But at the end of the day, the questions we're asking now are, how good can we be? Not just can we be well again or can we get better? It's really how good can we be? How fit, how strong, how mentally sharp, for how many years and decades can we carry that forward? The second question that empowers us every day at Gladden Longevity is, how do we make 100 the new 30? How do we actually turn back the clock and regain youthfulness? Because I think there's a really misconception about longevity. And that is, people tend to think of longevity as living a long time. And yet every picture you ever saw of somebody 100 or 110 is not what anybody's really going for. So what we really love about ourselves is our youthfulness. And so how do we actually go back and recapture youthfulness? And that leads to the next question is, how do we live young for a lifetime? And then finally, how do we crack the Hayflick limit? How do we live well beyond 120? So those are the 4 questions that empower us every day here at Gladden Longevity. And it's broad, it's far-reaching, and it's driven by curiosity and really very heartfelt passion to help others achieve things they never thought possible.
That's very inspiring. Totally appreciate it. We're looking at young lifetime youthfulness, recapturing it, and then making 100 the new 30, and really like how to be vital and how to have alacrity in our entire life and have aging not be a deteriorating process. It's true. We think of 100 years old, and it's not really what we're geared up to do.
That's
we look
right.
at the average 100-year-old, and it's not necessarily an inspiring picture at that point.
That's right.
Now, you've taken on your own health challenges, and you said you've been witness or part of your family going down the aging process and deteriorating drastically. And having your own health challenges is what kind of forced you to begin to ask the question, not only how do I survive, but how good can I be? Like how healthy can I actually become?
That's right. And it started with, I was in my early 50s. I'll be 70 at my next birthday. And yet I do anything I want. I mountain bike for an hour and a half on Sunday. I run 4 miles. I'll go snowboarding. I can literally do anything I want, surf, whatever I want to do. Start new businesses, learn new things, anything I want to do. I wake up 27 every day, right? And so that's a key mindset. I wake up 27 every day, and I'm going to turn 70 in February. So I'll have another decade of 27, then a decade of 28, a decade of 29. And then when I hit 100, chronologically, I'll be 30. So that's the goal. That's the title of the book I wrote. 100 is the new 30, just published back in August. So really, when I was in my early 50s and not feeling well, I was putting on weight. I was tired all the time. I was building my cardiology practice. We had 10 offices, 12 doctors. I co-founded a large heart hospital. I had cath labs going on. I was involved in medical device companies. I had a lot of things going on. And yet I had these issues. And when I went in and got tested by my colleagues, I was simply told, hey, everything checks out for your age. You're just getting older. Why don't you take an antidepressant? And one of the things that was happening was when I would become stressed, I would go over a cliff of depression, right? And it was very troublesome, right? You couldn't talk yourself out of it. You couldn't go for a run. It was just like you were like really depressed. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to accept that, right? It was an existential moment like none other in my life. This is not the peak of my life, and it's all downhill from here. I'm actually going to fight this. And so that 2.5 years later, I cracked the code on everything. Genetically, I don't make certain neurotransmitters efficiently. I got on the right supplements. That fixed that problem. I had subclinical hypothyroidism. My thyroid blood tests all looked normal. It was only when I did biometric testing to see what was happening at a cellular level by measuring my reflexes or resting metabolic rate that I actually discovered that my tissues were starved for thyroid. And then genetically in my brain, I don't convert inactive thyroid to active thyroid efficiently at all. So getting on the right thyroid was like a massive wake-up call. And then, of course, I was hormonally depleted at that point. Testosterone was low, DHA was low. And so I got those supplemented in a safe way. And then that's when I started to ask the question, gosh, I feel so good again. I went from not being able to keep up with my kids, which was really depressing, to them not being able to keep up with me again. And I thought, okay, now this is how I want it to be. And so I wonder how good I can be. If I can make this transition from where I was to where I am, I wonder how good we can be collectively. And that's the first question I started to ask.
Yeah. And so is there any limit? And it sounds like aging and deterioration, we often conflate those two issues, that we reach a certain point that we call or we theoretically make meaning with, that we reached a peak. Maybe it's at 50 years old or something like that, where we then buy the notion that it's a downhill process from here, that things start breaking, things start malfunctioning, right. There's nothing you can do about it.
That's right. And it's a story that's told to us by our families, by our friends, by our peers, by our government, by our corporations. It's time to retire, by our medical system. You're just getting older. What do you expect? You're just getting older, right? So you have all these messages telling you that when you get to a particular chronological age, that these things are supposed to be happening and you should stop doing these other things. And it's really what's so glorious about living today is that there's a complete uncoupling between chronological age and physiologic and spiritual age. So what I mean by that is I wake up 27 every day. My aspiration is to have a 300-year-old mind, all the wisdom, all the insight, all the centeredness, all of the spiritual connectivity of a 300-year-old mind in a 30-year-old body. Now what can I bring forward to the world? Now what do I want to do to accomplish things? My bigger sense of purpose, the world, I feel like I have more aspiration to do more things today, about to turn chronologically 70, than I did when I was 27, right? And that's the beauty of life, right? It should be an exponential growth. Every decade that we're alive, we grow exponentially in our ability to have impact and have opportunity. And yet when the lines cross, aging is an exponential decline. It's not linear, and we think it's linear, and we talk ourselves into, I'm okay because I'm okay for my age. That is the biggest way to lose. The fastest is to say I'm okay, because you're really on an exponential decline curve. And if you don't understand that, you palliate yourself by saying I'm okay. But anyway, when those lines cross, when that exponential increase in impact comes up and then exponential decline occurs, then your ability to have impact goes on for a little while, but then people come to visit you in a nursing home because they still care about you, right? And that's a fate that nobody wants. But if you stay young for a lifetime, right? If you stay 30 for your whole lifetime, then that ability to have exponential impact, growth, opportunity just goes up, and it becomes the most glorious life that's possible for us to live, and nobody's ever lived it before. And people don't even know to aspire to it. It's so far outside their realm of context, right? Because they're thinking, to get to 65, I retire, and then I buy a condo, then I downsize, then I do this, then I'm in a retirement community, then I play golf, and then I get old, and then I die. But it doesn't have to be that way at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about what are some of the things that we can put in place. I just turned 65 this year and I'm feeling pretty vibrant. And there is a part of me that's, look, I survived an open heart surgery this year. I didn't just survive it. Here I am kicking ass, actually. I have a lot of things going on. I have many different things going on. Maybe I'm not as physically active at this point as I was. I was working out when I had the dissection. I was actually in the middle of a workout when I had it. So I've been a little bit concerned about getting back and lifting up my own body weight or something like that. And I think that makes sense. I have a sternum that's been through a lot already. I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure what level I can level up at this point. But what do we tell people who are at that stage where the crossing of the two exponential curves going in opposite directions is being experienced by them, at least subjectively?
I think the first thing to understand is that in life, we only get to the answers to the questions that we're asking.
That's so totally profoundly true. I'm right down with you. Absolutely.
That's right. So we only get the answers to the questions that we're asking. So if you're listening to this, ask yourself, what questions am I asking? Am I asking, and I'll make this about you for now, Fred. If you're asking the question, how do I actually compensate for the fact that I had this surgery and had this aortic tear and it's been repaired? How do I actually deal with that? There are different paths you can take. You can say, how do I protect myself so something like that would never happen again in the future? And what's the safest course of action, right? So that factors in. But the other thing is, how do I actually maintain my youthfulness? And I know I need to be physically active, and I know I need to have good cardiovascular health, and I know I have to do these other things. So how do I actually balance those two things out? If you're simply asking one of the questions, which is, how do I stay safe for the rest of my life? The answers you get will be, I'm going to stay away from lifting stuff. I'm going to stay away from doing this. I'm not going to hike. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to do all these things. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pay the price on the other side of really declining health at a very rapid rate. And so if you're asking the question, how do I optimize my health and how do I see what happened to me as an opportunity to redefine how I go about my physical activities, but still enable me to maintain my physical fitness, my robustness, my VO2 max, my anaerobic threshold, my vascular health, all the things that muscle mass, all the things that are critical for staying young, and do it in light of what just happened to me, which, depending on which questions you're asking, you'll get the answers. And that's why, if you're listening to this in the audience, maybe you've had a surgery, maybe you had an accident, maybe you had a concussion, maybe you had a heart attack. If you're asking the question, how do I do one thing, that's all you'll get. But you really want to be asking the question, how do I stay young? How do I regain my youthfulness? If you ask that question, it will lead you to a different set of answers and a different set of people to help you find those answers.
Very interesting. Yeah. I was in, let's see where it was. I guess it was Idaho earlier this year, Sun Valley, Idaho, at a Tony Robbins event. And at that event, Peter Diamandis was there, and he spoke a little bit to his longevity work. and living to 120. And he has a Life Force, I believe is the name of his company. And he's doing things that seem like they're at least aligned, if not parallel, with what you're doing. Are you familiar with his work first? Let me ask that.
Very familiar. We've had a number of people that have gone through that program and then come to us to actually help them really go places. So I will just say this, I'm not a big fan. Peter Diamandis has basically started a company called HLI, Human Longevity Institute. And I had a couple of clients that went through that, and I sat in on their revelation reports and everything. And what they do is they take people and run them through predetermined testing that's really fairly superficial, even though they call it comprehensive. And then they basically give people a set of recommendations. And if you really need anything, then you need to go find it on your own. And we've had some people that have left us and gone there and are now coming back to us. Our approach is completely different. Our approach is to actually work with the individual and say, look, what is it that you want to accomplish? Where do you want to be? And then what are the hurdles that you see in your life? Now, let's sit down and build out a program for you that addresses your particular needs, right? Based on your own medical history, your own aspirations and everything else. And we'll make sure that you're safe. We'll make sure that you'll do that. And yes, we do a lot of the same testing, but then we go way beyond the testing that they do, because we're really looking to optimize things, right? I just got off the call with people at University of California, San Diego, with a new mitochondrial test, which is the energy producing portion of the cell. Going through an entire new algorithm on how to analyze the mitochondria and treat the mitochondria and reverse mitochondrial dysfunction, which is why so many people have chronic fatigue or feel they have long haul symptoms from COVID or Lyme disease or things like that. And we already have good techniques to do it, but we're always asking, how do we do it better? And so with this new testing, we're going to be able to unravel that knot even further. That's a mindset that we have where we're married to our questions, whereas a program like those, they have a set of answers and they're going to apply those answers to everybody.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I love the idea of being married to your questions. I think that's a great methodology, something to take on for all of us in all areas of life. When you find the answer, you've basically gotten off the road anyway. So
that's right. That's right.
And I really want you to speak to the intervention. So the interventions, I'm not sure that you would have me doing pull-ups, or would you have me eating or getting IVs of bioequivalents, or all of the above, or none of the above? What is it? What is the intervention for somebody who wants to transform their life and rediscover the capacity to be vital?
So the first thing to do, if let's say you became a client, right? The first thing we would do is actually do more comprehensive genetics on you to actually see. People that have aortic dissections typically have some genetic predisposition for that.
I had a bicuspid. I had a tricuspid. I guess I had a tricuspid where it should have been bicuspid. That's it.
Well, no, you had a bicuspid where it should have been tricuspid.
All right, thank you. Okay. That's right. I got it one way or the other.
So that was a genetic predisposition, right? So we would want to know if you have other genetic predispositions that we need to know about, right? Mm-hmm. Because when we're designing a program for you, we want to basically modify genetic expression in a way that it keeps you safe or helps to optimize your situation. So we would start with genetics. And then the first thing to do is, let's say you just came through this surgery. So we know that you need to heal. We know that the aorta needs to heal from the surgery that was done. We also know that the sternum needs to heal. And if we are, or if you are too aggressive in doing something, you can actually disrupt that. So then we would look at, where are you in the healing process? So there are ways that we can do that with some scans and some imaging, some physical exams and things like that, where we get a feel for where you are in the healing process. And if you have healed completely, great. But if you haven't, the first thing we would do is to do some regenerative technologies, utilizing peptides and potentially stem cells and some other technologies to actually make sure that you are really well healed. That sternum is rock solid, that your aorta is healed nicely, that there aren't any residual tears, blood flow is normalized. And then from there, we would say, okay, let's start to stress the system here in a controlled environment so we can see where you are today in terms of your aerobic capacity, your heart's pumping capacity, what's the status of your blood vessels. And then from there, we would get prescriptive with you about exercise and other things. And we may find that there are other things that are going on for you in the aging process that need to be addressed as well. So it's really about asking the bigger question, how do we get Fred back to doing everything he was before, doing it better than he did it before, and doing it safely, right? And so that's a knot that has to be unraveled, and then the answers come forward. So
Fascinating and totally a great pitch, by the way. It's hard not to listen to everything you're saying, and I think I'm not alone in saying that. This is your capacity to articulate the sequence of events that would take place, as well as the analysis and then the interventions, is extraordinary, and I truly want to commend you on that. Well done, Zed. Appreciate it completely.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's say I do have some residual tears, or I think that and the last CT scan that I had, there was something, maybe they're calling it the makings of a pseudoaneurysm, like a false lumen power that's pushing out here and there that was seen on the CT scan.
We would want to know if you did have a pseudoaneurysm, because pseudoaneurysms can be dangerous, right? Aneurysms, just so the audience understands, what's the difference between an aneurysm and a pseudoaneurysm? Think of a garden hose, right? And if you have a garden hose, and let's say, maybe you've seen this happen, where the garden hose starts to bubble out on the side of it, right? Let's say all the layers of the hose, the inner lining, the middle portion, and the outer covering, all three of those start to bulge out. That would be a true aneurysm, right? In a pseudoaneurysm, there's a disruption in the inner lining and in the middle portion of the hose. And the only thing that's really left with integrity is the outer portion, the covering of the hose. Now there's fluid, water in this case, if it's a hose, leaking through those first two layers and now pushing against that outer layer. So the only thing holding the pressure of the water back is the outer layer. It's not all three layers that have now bulged out. It's just the outer layer is holding it together. That's a pseudoaneurysm. And it has a significantly higher risk of rupture, right? Because it has less physical integrity. If that's the case, then you have to ask yourself, is it possible to go in and put a stent across that where it could be covered to where that's no longer an issue, right? Or is there something else that needs to be done? Because if you want to be fit and active, you need to make sure you can exercise, but you also need to make sure you do it safely. So.
Now, would that mean, in a case like this, would that mean going back into the sternum?
No, it wouldn't. No, it'd mean potentially, and this is all theoretical because I don't really know what you have. But just for the audience to play this out, so to speak, it would be a procedure where we go in through your leg and go up and use some contrast and some ultrasound or whatever, and basically then put in a sleeve inside the artery to seal that part of the artery off so that blood couldn't ever cause a rupture at that site. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, all right. That's fascinating indeed, and a little shaky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The thing is, here's the interesting thing, right? I find that there are some people that say, geez, I don't really want to know my genetics because
I might learn something I didn't want to hear.
Yeah, I may find something I didn't want to hear, or don't test me for cancer cells because I don't want to know that I have cancer cells. In our world, what we've discovered is that everything is addressable. Everything is addressable. And so it's really just a question of at what point you address it. If you know about malignant cells early, they are very addressable, right? You can actually sort that out, figure it out, and really solve those issues. It's when it's at stage 4. And even at stage 4, we're having amazing success for people. But if you find out about things early, you can take care of them. In your case, if you find out that you do have a pseudoaneurysm, the thing is, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'll just modulate my activities and see how long this will go. Or you can say, no, I actually want to go climb Mount Everest this next year, and I want to get that fixed so I can go do it. So it becomes a mindset kind of thing, right? And the question you're asking.
Yeah, interesting again. Very interesting. And where are you located? And how do people find you if they want to learn a little bit more about you? And do you do work online and those kind of things? What is your level of availability and how do you do your work?
So we have a clinic here in Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, that's where my son is.
Okay. Yeah. Close to DFW airport. It's in Irving, Texas, just next to Dallas, between the airport and downtown Dallas. And basically it's a facility where we do all the diagnostic testing, all the regenerative procedures. We have access to plasmapheresis, young plasma, EBU, ozone, stem cells of multiple varieties, exosomes, peptides. We're doing a number of studies inside IRB-approved trials. We're actually now even unraveling the knot of aging itself, and by using something called transcriptomics and proteomics to actually see how genes are being expressed related to the aging process, so we can go in and modulate those genes. And so it's a very in-depth approach that we take with people, and we're really dedicated to getting them the best results. So if you're interested to really dive deep, we are the best return on investment, but we're not the smallest investment, right, to work with us. But we are the best return on investment, I will tell you that. But if you want to check us out, go to gladdenlongevity.com. I have a podcast that Dr. Fred was kind enough to be on. It's called the Gladden Longevity Podcast.com. And there's an age hackers portion to that. You may see age hackers when you go out there. And then the other thing is I published this book just recently at the end of August, which became an Amazon #1 bestseller, called 100 is the New 30, How Playing the Symphony of Longevity Will Enable Us to Live Young for a Lifetime. And that's really outlines a lot of concepts and things in there well beyond what we could possibly go into in this short interview, but it's a great resource. So all those are great resources. And if you really have something you're struggling with, a lot of people will come to us with aspirations of make me 30 again. Okay, well, we can walk you through that. It may be a multi-year process to get there, but we can walk you through that. Other people come to us with, gosh, I just was diagnosed with diabetes, or I just had a shoulder that acted up, or I just had a concussion, or something's really bugging me, or I'm starting to develop early cognitive decline. Is there something you can do to help me? The answer is yes. We can knock all those things out of the park, but just understand that, again, the investment is substantial because we are basically looking at it through the lens of how do we actually get you the most durable, sustainable, comprehensive, complete approach to this that gives you the most durable result. So that's how we do it. And it's very satisfying work for us to do it that way. It's not just come in, we'll give you some red light therapy and call it good, right? That red light therapy may be part of it, but it's a very comprehensive approach. So if that appeals to you, if this kind of approach appeals to you, then I don't know of a better place to come than to come see us.
Interesting. And how about third party? Do third parties pay for your services?
No.
Care or anything like that?
No, we don't take any insurance. And the reason we don't take insurance is because we tried it early on, a decade ago or so. And what we found is that we would do a test. The person would try to run it through their insurance. And then the insurance company wanted them to have a diagnosis.
Exactly.
And so then we had to give them a diagnosis. But then now they went to get life insurance and now they have a diagnosis. And it was just a mess. And then, or the insurance company will refuse to pay for it.
Fully understand this.
And now the lab testing company was charging them 3 times what we were going to charge them for the test.
Yeah.
And so it just was like, okay, we're done. We're out. Just write us a check and off we go. So that's how we work. Yeah.
Understood. Yeah. And do you have mental health services inside of your system for people?
We do. We are, if you go through the book or learn more about what we're doing, really we have a whole construct around longevity and life optimization, if you will. And one of the central pieces of that is a circle. Each of these is a circle. There's a life energy circle, a longevity circle, a health circle, a performance circle, and now there's
These
actually
are concentric circles. I see you with your hands.
concentric circles. That's correct, and you'll see that if you get the book, you'll see it all diagrammed out, and I go through that in great detail throughout the book. But the bottom line is that in the life energy circle is mental health, and so many people suffer with anxiety, depression, addiction, PTSD, and really my take on mental health is that all of us have suffered trauma. Right? There's none of us that came through unscathed. All of us have suffered trauma. We all live in reaction to that trauma, right? And then we basically have created stories around how we're living that out. And those stories then become our identity. And so now we're actually tied to something that is familiar, but it's not really functional. And what I've discovered in life is that the hardest thing for people to deal with is actually ambiguity, which is the unknown. So if we're going to take you from living in reaction to that trauma into being free of that trauma, there's a bit of a hurdle to get over. The hurdle is the hurdle of ambiguity. What's that even going to feel like, be like? Who am I going to be on the other side of that? But we work with people around this, and we are collaborations with mental health practitioners in our area that can work online and work directly with people to actually help sort this out. And then we have technologies that can actually fix people's anxiety and other things using something called brain frequency. We can reprogram the nervous system in the brain. We can heal concussions. We can do so many amazing things. If you're sitting out there and you have a problem, chances are we can really make a dramatic impact for you. Again, it's going to be an investment, and you're going to get a great ROI.
So you've talked about the investment on a number of occasions. Is there anything more you want to say about that? I only want to tap on that because you've said that about 3 times in the last 6 months.
Yeah, and I bring it up because really for people to get good results, it's a question of not just writing us a check. It's about time, attention, and resources, right? So they have to be willing to come in and do some things. And how much time and attention are we talking? If you can give us an hour a day or maybe 90 minutes a day, depending on what you're dealing with, that's all we're talking about there on the investment side there. When you talk about financial investment, it depends on what you're dealing with, right? But it could be anywhere from 15K to 100K or maybe 150K, depending on what the problem is, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Said, well done, great presentation. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that maybe I haven't tapped on? I guess I personalize this a little bit, but we only use me as a template, I hope, rather than a subject. And I hope that's really important to you. And I hope that we were able to make our point across using me as a nidus for the crystal rather than the actual poker.
Yeah, no, that I think that was all perfect. I think it was a wonderful conversation. I think you opened it up quite nicely. I would just encourage people to step outside of the environment that they're familiar with regards to how the aging process proceeds, right? It really is possible to step out of that completely. And so if you can latch on to the idea that you can have a 30-year-old body and a 300-year-old mind when you're 100 years old chronologically, that's really becomes the North Star in all of this.
Awesome. Dr. Gladden, thank you so much for joining us on The Healthy Healer. You clearly are a healer and clearly are healthy, and it's really a wonderment that we get to meet each other again. Thank you so much for being my friend, my colleague, and for sharing your insights as well as what you have to offer for the world as a healer. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Great to see you again, Fred.
Great to see you. Thank you.